What's up everybody, JJ Shankles the Goat Toasters here. Today I was doing a couple experiments related to upsampling 1080p footage to 4K to see how good it worked and how well you could intersperse 1080p with 4K. And I was really surprised with the results at the end, so I thought I'd make this little video to sort of summarize it and maybe share this knowledge with you. Maybe it helps you out. If you learned something today that you didn't know before, make sure you hit that thumbs up down below to give me that like. And if you like this type of video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of them. So let's get right into it. First off, I wanted to show you guys a little B-roll sequence. This is shot some at 4K, some at 1080p, and see if you can tell the difference between the footage. So after all that, even though I shot the footage, there were some that even I couldn't tell. I did look at the metadata to see whether it was actually native 4K or native 1080p. So my testing procedure to make that B-roll sequence was I took my 1080p sequence and my 4K, I cut them, interspersed them, and then did an output render. It's this render with the same settings that I normally do to upload to YouTube. My render settings, I usually keep it at 100 megabits per second. That's a little over double what YouTube will compress it down to. And I thought better safe than sorry, give them some extra data and they'll do the compression anyways. I did look on YouTube and here's a standard sheet of what they recommend you upload at, and I've seen some other people on YouTube say they upload at about double or slightly over double, so I just thought 100 megabits is a nice easy round number, so might as well do that. I did also in my research come across this table. It was compiled by this website down below, so shout out to them for making this amazing table. This table covers what bitrate YouTube actually stores it at. So they're gonna take whatever you upload and sort of do their compression on it to leave it at these bit rates. Sorry if I lost you on some of the tables and math and numbers. Let's get back to the raw data, the 1080p versus 4K. I was really surprised with how good 1080p and 4K coming out of the same camera. We all know 4K is high quality nowadays and storage isn't as expensive as it used to be. And so working in 4K is almost the standard nowadays. Almost everything shoots in 4K. My phone shoots 4K. But nowadays with brand new cameras coming out, with the EOS R coming out with 4K shooting resolution, and I know the EOS R has a bunch of issues that they've got to work through, specifically related to overheating with the shooting in 8K. But the big question comes back to bigger number is better, right? And sometimes it's not. There's so many specs that aren't summarized in that resolution. Why does the Nikon Z6 shooting at 1080p look better than my phone, this is the Pixel 4 XL, than the phone does at 4K? It's more pixels, it's 4 times as many pixels, so it should be better, right? And that's where it comes back to, there's so many specs that go into a camera, and almost looking at spec sheets don't tell you everything. And you really need to look at examples of what other people have shot with that camera to see how good it works. But back to the footage, I was really surprised with how much I couldn't tell the difference, especially with movement. If it's a static shot of me right here, and you could stop at a fairly still frame and then zoom in, you can tell the difference. But if there's any amount of motion blur, especially if you're shooting at 24 or 30 frames a second, there's gonna be this natural motion blur that makes it not as detailed and sharp. It's my opinion that I think it's the motion blur of, if your B-roll is a bunch of moving shots of things, then you really can't tell as much the difference between 1080p and 4K. If you're doing a more still shot of a bunch of details, then yes, 4K, you can tell the difference between 4K and 1080p. All these statements do come with the asterisk of shot on the same camera, shot on the Nikon Z6, shot at 1080p or 4K. They're both very high quality, and if you're viewing them on YouTube, or especially if you're watching on YouTube on your phone, you're really not gonna tell much of a difference. So if you are a creator out there, don't feel held back by shooting at 1080p. If it saves you a lot of data, just go ahead and drop it down to 1080p. If you're wanting a lot of high detail shots, switch back up to the 4K. This was some surprising results. I was always wary of shooting at 1080p 120 frames a second, which if you want slow-mo on this camera, you gotta drop it down to 1080p to get 120 frames a second. To get that beautiful buttery smooth slow motion, here's an example shot. And I was always kind of worried that it would look different interspersed with 4K, and then if it drops to 1080p for a little bit of slow-mo and then back to 4K, that you would be able to tell much of a difference, but I couldn't tell near as much as I was expecting. Also, a little bonus tip, anyone who is uploading to YouTube specifically, with those bitrate charts I showed earlier, with how much compression they do to your footage to make it fit at these bit rates. If you shot something at 1080p, it will be better if you upsample it to 4K and upload the 4K footage. Because with 4K footage, they allocate a certain amount of bit rate and your audio bit rate will be higher. So that's a little tip for any other creators on YouTube watching this video. But anyway, that wraps up this video, and I hope you learned something as well as I learned something. I know I learned that I shouldn't be as afraid of 1080p footage as I have been in the past, because quality 1080p upsampled to 4K really works well. If you found this helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more videos on this channel. I hope you guys have an amazing day out there. Make sure you're staying safe. Make sure you're washing your hands a lot. It is 2020 after all. And I'll see you on the next video. Go Toaster out.